My ex's lies caught up with him at a high-stakes event. I took control. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. Chandeliers threw false stars across the ballroom while my ex rehearsed his favorite role, the flawless man. He stood at the podium in a tux that fit like a lie, smiling the smile that once made me forget how to count my own heartbeats. Entrepreneur of the Year, the banner read. I almost laughed. You don't become a legend. You storyboard it, one polished untruth at a time. I used to believe him. I believed when he said the late nights were for us, when he said his past was complicated, when he said I was paranoid for asking about the second phone he kept face down. I believed until the rent bounced, my savings evaporated, and my mother stopped answering my calls because he'd told her I'd lost control. Funny thing about being humiliated, it teaches you to catalog details like evidence, dates, faces, the brand of cologne that wasn't his on the passenger seat. Tonight was the culmination of his careful script. The PR director who once sent me cease and desists waved at him from table 3. His mentor, Ethan, lifted a glass. Ethan, who swore he'd never met me, though he helped pack our apartment. Even the MC repeated the orphan story, the one where my ex climbed from nothing all by himself. But I knew the bank account his nothing came from. I knew the real last name he buried. The stage lights warmed the back of my neck as I stood beside the AV booth, calm like a storm eye. Mia, the event coordinator with a quiet spine of steel, had slid a USB into my palm an hour earlier. When you're ready, she whispered. I'd spent months gathering receipts, voice notes, emails sent from fake domains, a paper trail of promises that stole my credit score and my good name. Every betrayal labeled, every lie time-stamped. Give it up for a man of integrity, the MC boomed. Applause swelled. He searched the room for a camera, not for me. Good. I wanted him to see me last. My finger hovered over the laptop trackpad. Fear hissed, what if I was wrong? But the truth doesn't need courage, it needs daylight. I exhaled, clicked to switch feeds, and the slideshow of his glossy victory stuttered, then froze. The ballroom turned to hush as a waveform filled the screens, his voice file, time-stamped, titled, Keep Her Quiet. I pressed play. The ballroom's oxygen vanished when his voice filled the speakers. That smug cadence, dripping with arrogance, echoed through crystal glasses and silenced forks. She's starting to ask too many questions. Just keep her quiet. I'll handle the rest. If anyone believes her, I'm finished. I'd replayed that clip hundreds of times alone in my apartment, trembling, hating myself for letting him gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. But hearing it blasted across this gilded hall, it was like watching his carefully built tower of lies sway in real time. At first, laughter bubbled from a corner table. Someone thought it was a joke. But the second recording left no room for humor. His voice again, sharper this time. Delete the invoices. If she finds them, we're done. And for God's sake, don't let her talk to the press. A ripple moved through the crowd. Murmurs turned into sharp whispers. I saw people glance at each other, saw his investors' faces blanch under ballroom lights. My ex's smile faltered, his jaw twitching like a mask slipping mid-performance. He lunged toward the AV booth, but 2 security guards, Mia's doing, stepped neatly into his path. Their expressions were unreadable, professional, but their timing was perfect. I kept my eyes locked on him, and for a moment, it was just us. The man who had once whispered love into my skin, now staring at me like I was a weapon he hadn't anticipated. I could see it. The math in his eyes, calculating whether to charm, threaten, or collapse. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You deserve to know who you've been applauding. The third slide appeared. Bank transfers, neat columns of numbers, his signature scrawled at the bottom. Proof of stolen funds. Gasp shot through the room. Ethan, his so-called mentor, paled visibly. Investors whispered in frantic tones. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" My ex slammed his hand on the podium, grabbing the mic. "This is fabricated. She's obsessed. Bitter. She'll say anything to ruin me." His words rang hollow. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in his audience. But doubt wasn't enough. They needed undeniable truth. And I had it. I reached for the folder under my arm. The one piece of evidence even he couldn't twist. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might shake the papers free. Because inside were documents that not only proved fraud, but tied him to someone far more dangerous. And when I opened it, the name on top wasn't his. It was someone I once trusted. The folder in my hands felt heavier than stone. My fingers shook as I slid out the top sheet and held it under the ballroom lights. The audience leaned forward, curiosity sharpening into hunger. This, I said, forcing each word out evenly, isn't just about him. He didn't work alone. Gasps rippled when the name came into focus on the projector screen. Ethan Clark. His so-called mentor. The man who toasted him minutes ago. The man who had sworn to me with a blank stare that he barely knew who I was. The room shifted. Ethan's glass slipped from his hand, shattering across marble. My ex's mask cracked completely, fury flashing in his eyes. He turned toward Ethan like they hadn't rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in secret. "Don't look at me," Ethan barked, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You promised she was handled." Every camera phone in the ballroom rose like a swarm of tiny witnesses, red recording lights blinking in the dark. The crowd smelled blood. My ex, once a master storyteller, was suddenly scrambling in a script he hadn't written. I pressed on. Bank transfers. Shell companies. Ethan's accounts as the funnel. My ex as the face. Together, they siphoned money meant for community projects. Millions funneled into personal luxuries, offshore retreats, and debts they buried under new lies. The investors exploded in shouts. Someone yelled, "I put my life savings into this." Another demanded security take them both away. The glittering event had transformed into a courtroom, and I was the prosecution. My ex slammed a fist onto the podium, his voice trembling with fury. "None of this proves anything. She forged it all." But then the fourth slide hit the screen. A video file. Grainy, late night, but unmistakable. Him and Ethan, laughing over a table stacked with documents, the audio catching every damning word. "If she finds out, we'll bury her with rumors. Who'd believe her over us?" The ballroom froze in collective silence. Every eye shifted back to me. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but instead I felt raw, almost exposed. Because this wasn't just about vengeance, it was about finally being seen, finally being heard after years of being erased. And just as I steadied myself to deliver the final blow, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Stop this now." It boomed from the back of the room. Everyone turned, and my stomach dropped, because the voice belonged to someone I never thought I'd see standing with him. The ballroom parted like water as the figure stepped forward, each heel strike echoing louder than the frantic whispers around us. At first, I thought my eyes were tricking me. But no, there she was. Claire, my closest friend. My anchor in the months after the breakup. The one person who swore she believed me when no one else would. She didn't look at me. Her gaze was fixed on him. My ex. Her lips pressed into a line of silent allegiance. "Enough of this circus," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice through the static of murmurs. "She's twisting everything. This is obsession, not truth." The betrayal landed heavier than any of his lies ever had. My knees buckled, but I caught myself on the edge of the AV booth. Claire, the friend who had held my hand when I sobbed, who had told me I deserved better, was standing with them. My ex seized the opening. "Exactly. Thank you, Claire." He gestured wildly toward her like she was Exhibit A in his defense. "You see? She's not well. She's been stalking me for months, inventing conspiracies, dragging innocent people down with her. This," he pointed at me, voice trembling with theatrical pity, "this is a cry for help, not justice." Gasps. Whispers. Doubt began to seep back into the crowd, undoing the tight grip I'd had just moments ago. I could feel it slipping, their sympathy, their outrage, melting back into suspicion aimed at me. Claire stepped closer, slipping an arm protectively around his shoulders like she'd rehearsed it. Her nails dug into his tuxedo sleeve. "I've seen what she's capable of," she said, eyes locked on mine with a coldness that felt rehearsed. "If you all knew the things she's done." My throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to defend myself, to scream back the truth. But desperation stinks. I needed control. Evidence, not emotion. So I reached back into the folder. "Funny," I said, my voice shaking but clear. Because Claire already knew what was in these documents. In fact, I held up a text printout, her number stamped across the top. She helped cover it up. A sharp inhale swept through the ballroom. Phones tilted toward Claire now. Her hand slipped from his sleeve. Her face drained of color. But before I could press further, a loud crash rang out, the podium tipping as my ex shoved it aside. His face was red, twisted, desperate. He wasn't hiding anymore. "You want the truth?" he shouted, spittle flying under the chandelier light. "Fine, I'll give you truth, but you won't survive it." And with that, he leapt off the stage, straight toward me. For a heartbeat, everything slowed. The crowd's gasp, the metallic thud of the microphone hitting the floor, the blur of his tuxedo as he lunged toward me. I braced myself, but before his hands could reach, security intercepted, slamming him back against the edge of the stage. The room erupted. Women screamed, glasses toppled, someone yelled to call the police. But his mask was already gone. "This is her fault," he bellowed, thrashing against the guards. His voice, stripped of charm, was raw and venomous. "She ruined everything. Do you know who I had to keep quiet? Do you know what deals are on the line? You think you've exposed me? You've doomed all of us." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. All of us. My chest tightened. Who was us? Claire shrank back, eyes darting wildly toward the exits. Ethan sat rigid, pale as marble, sweat beading his forehead. Investors whispered like a hive of hornets, piecing fragments together in real time. And me. I clutched the folder tighter, my knuckles white, because I realized what I held wasn't just about fraud or betrayal. It was bigger, darker. I stepped forward, heart pounding. "He's admitting it himself. You all heard it." But before I could say more, he twisted suddenly, breaking free from one guard and wrenching himself half around to face me. His eyes burned with hatred, but beneath it was something else, fear. "You think you've won?" His voice cracked into a jagged laugh. "You don't even know the half of it. Show them those papers, and you'll end up in the ground like the others who got too close." The ballroom froze. The others. A chill raced down my spine. My instincts screamed this wasn't just bluster. He was reckless, yes, but his terror was real. He wasn't bluffing. One guard finally wrestled him back into a chokehold, another securing his wrists. The audience shouted for him to be dragged out, but my hands trembled as I flipped to the next document in the folder. It wasn't a bank record this time. It was correspondence. Letters, signed with initials I recognized from whispered stories he once slipped when drunk. Names tied to debts, to men who didn't forgive, to networks that thrived in shadows. My pulse roared in my ears. If I revealed this, I wouldn't just be destroying his image. I'd be exposing something far more dangerous than a con man in a tux. And as I lifted the paper toward the projector, Claire's voice cut through the chaos, shrill and desperate. "Stop. You don't know what you're doing." Her scream wasn't for me. It was for them. Whoever them really was. Claire's scream ricocheted through the ballroom, sharper than glass breaking. For the first time all evening, her polished mask cracked. Fear leaked out of her voice, unfiltered and raw. Everyone turned toward her. Investors, guests. Even the guards restraining him froze just long enough for my ex to twist violently against their grip. His face wasn't just furious anymore. It was panicked, like a trapped animal that suddenly realized the cage was closing. "Don't," Claire shouted again, lunging toward me. "If you show that, you're not just ruining him. You're putting yourself in danger. You have no idea who's behind this." The crowd erupted in overlapping voices. Who's behind what? What is she talking about? Phones filmed from every angle, 100 digital witnesses archiving the downfall in real time. I held the document higher, projecting it onto the massive screen. A hush slammed down as the letters appeared. An email chain. Dates. Amounts. And at the bottom, initials. RK. A wave of recognition rippled through the room. I saw it on Ethan's face first, his jaw locked, his lips white. Then on a few of the older investors, who exchanged horrified looks. These weren't just random letters. RK was someone they knew. Claire's hands shook as she whispered, "You've signed your death warrant." I stepped back, steadying my voice. "No, I've signed his." My ex thrashed, eyes darting toward the exit like he expected shadows to pour in at any second. "You idiot," he snarled, spit flying. "You think they'll protect you? You think the truth matters? They'll come for you too. You're nothing without me." But his desperation betrayed him. For years, he painted me as fragile, unstable, insignificant. Now the power shift was undeniable. He was the one trembling, and I was the one holding the match to his carefully spun web. The MC, pale and sweating, whispered into a phone at the side of the stage. Security radios crackled. A few guests edged toward the doors, suddenly realizing this was bigger than corporate scandal. It was something darker. And then, from the back of the ballroom, another voice rang out. Calm. Steady. Too steady. She's right. He was never working alone. The crowd turned, and standing in the doorway was a man I hadn't seen in over a year. The one person I thought I could still trust. And he was holding a gun. The sight of him knocked the air from my lungs. Daniel. My brother. The one who swore he cut ties with my ex the day the breakup imploded. The one who told me, he's poison, sis. Stay away. Now he stood in the doorway, Tuck's jacket unbuttoned, a pistol glinting beneath the chandeliers like a punctuation mark to every lie. The room detonated in screams. Guests ducked under tables, heels scraping across marble, champagne flutes toppling in showers of glass. Security hesitated, torn between restraining my ex and neutralizing this new, more immediate threat. Daniel raised his free hand, calm as if ordering coffee. Everyone sit down. Nobody leaves. His voice was steady, but I caught the twitch at his jaw, the tiny crack of a man in over his head. My ex's eyes lit up with something close to relief. Finally, he muttered, twisting against the guards. Tell them, Daniel. Tell them this is bigger than her petty revenge. Petty revenge. The words sliced me, but not as deep as seeing my brother tilt the gun slightly toward me. Why? My voice shook, but carried through the microphone still live on the stage. You told me you hated him. You warned me about him. Daniel's gaze flickered, guilt, then steel. I warned you because I knew what he was capable of. What we were capable of. You were never supposed to be part of this. The word we struck harder than the barrel pointed my way. Claire's hands flew up, palms trembling. Daniel, don't do this here. Not in front of cameras. But it was too late. Phones still rolled from beneath overturned tables, capturing every frame. If Daniel fired, the entire world would see it. You don't understand, Daniel said, voice fraying now. If she releases the rest, R.K. won't let any of us walk away. This isn't about fraud anymore. It's survival. My ex seized on it, snarling like a cornered dog. Shoot her. End it now, before she destroys us all. The ballroom roared in panic. My blood went cold. For a moment, I saw my brother's hand tighten on the trigger, the line of his arm tense. But then his eyes locked with mine. And beneath the fear and rage, I saw it, the same flicker of loyalty that had once made him my protector. His hand trembled. The gun wavered. And in that split second of hesitation, I realized something. I wasn't the only one Daniel was lying to. Someone else in this room had their own hold on him, and they were about to reveal it. Daniel. The single word cut through the chaos like a scalpel. It didn't come from me, or Claire, or even my ex. It came from Ethan. He rose slowly from his chair, adjusting his cufflinks like this was just another business meeting. His voice carried an authority I'd never heard before, smooth, deliberate, venom wrapped in silk. Put it down, Ethan commanded, nodding toward the gun. You're making a scene. Daniel froze, shoulders stiffening. His grip on the pistol faltered almost imperceptibly, and in that tiny tremor, the truth clicked into place. Ethan wasn't just a partner. He was the one pulling Daniel's strings. My ex's head whipped toward Ethan, betrayal and confusion mingling. Wait, you control him? Ethan smirked, his calm at odds with the frenzy of the ballroom. Control is such a strong word. Let's just say Daniel understands where his loyalties and his debts belong. My brother's jaw clenched. He wouldn't meet my eyes, shame carving deep lines across his face. I took a step forward, my voice sharp enough to slice the moment in half. So that's it. You let him rope you in, Daniel? You let him decide who you are? You've been protecting their lies while letting me drown? Daniel's knuckles whitened around the pistol. You don't get it, he muttered, his voice cracking for the first time. You were never supposed to be a target. But when you started digging, you made me one, I snapped. The audience, what was left of them, sat frozen in the wreckage of shattered crystal and toppled chairs. No one dared move. Every phone lens was locked on Daniel's trembling hands, on Ethan's cold smile, on my ex's frantic struggles against security. And then Ethan's tone shifted, lower, sharper. Daniel, do it now. or you'll regret it more than you regret betraying your own sister." That broke something in me. He's bluffing. I shouted. "If you shoot me, every phone in this room has already uploaded the proof. You'll be nothing but their disposable pawn." Daniel's eyes flicked between Ethan and me, torn in two directions, sweat rolling down his temple. Finally, his gaze locked on mine, just for a second. And in that second, I recognized the silent apology in his eyes, the same look he had the day he lied to me about cutting ties. But before I could read more, his arm jerked violently to the side. The pistol fired. The blast shook the ballroom. And when the smoke cleared, the bullet hadn't hit me. It had hit someone else. The gunshot cracked like thunder, ricocheting off the chandeliers. A split second of stunned silence followed. Then a scream tore through the ballroom. Claire staggered backward, clutching her shoulder, scarlet blooming across her sequin dress. She collapsed against a toppled chair, her face contorted in disbelief. Phones zoomed in. Gasps echoed. The smell of gunpowder mixed with spilled champagne. Daniel froze, gun still smoking in his hand. His chest heaved, eyes wide. His voice faltered. "I didn't mean." Ethan's composure fractured at last. His calm mask cracked into fury. "Idiot. That wasn't the plan." He stormed forward, grabbing Daniel by the collar. "Do you realize what you've just done? She was our insurance." Insurance. The word rang in my ears. Claire hadn't just been a traitor, she'd been their backup, their shield. And now, bleeding and gasping on the marble, she was no longer useful to them. My ex, still pinned by security, twisted violently to see her. "Claire." His voice cracked, desperate, raw in a way I'd never heard before. Not love, fear. Fear of losing his last loyal pawn. Claire's eyes fluttered, and through gritted teeth she rasped, "Don't let them win," before her head slumped against the chair. The ballroom descended into chaos again. Some guests rushed toward the exits. Others pressed closer, phones raised high like vultures circling. Security tried to wrestle the gun from Daniel, but Ethan barked, "Stand down." And, terrifyingly, they hesitated. My pulse spiked. Ethan's reach was deeper than I thought. He had men on the inside. I edged closer to the projector, clutching the folder tighter. I still had the final documents, the ones with names, dates, and proof tying Ethan and my ex to R.K. If I revealed them now, there'd be no going back. No undoing it. But Ethan noticed. His eyes snapped to me, sharp as a blade. "Don't," he hissed, his voice carrying over the commotion. "You think this is about justice? You're playing in a league that buries people like you without leaving a trace. Put the folder down." Daniel's gun trembled in his hand, caught between me and Ethan. His loyalty wavered, his breathing ragged. I met his eyes, my voice steady despite the quake in my chest. "You still have a choice, Daniel. Protect them, or protect me. But understand this. Once I show these papers, the world will finally know the truth." His grip tightened. Sweat dripped down his temple. And then, in a moment that stretched into eternity, he turned the gun. Not at me, not at Ethan, but at my ex. The muzzle found its mark, square at my ex's chest. The shift in the room was instant, the tension like a live wire snapping. Security, still gripping his arms, froze, caught between orders and survival. My ex's bravado drained from his face, replaced by something rawer, the look of a predator realizing he was now prey. "Daniel," he stammered, his voice suddenly small. "We were family. Don't forget who saved you when no one else would. Don't forget who paid your debts." Daniel's hands shook, but his aim didn't waver. "You didn't save me," he spat, voice cracking. "You chained me. Every debt you paid, you collected in favors. Every favor turned into blackmail. You ruined my life. And hers." His finger tightened on the trigger. The crowd, half hidden under tables and toppled chairs, held their collective breath. Some phones zoomed closer, hungry for the shot. Others shook wildly as hands trembled. Ethan stepped forward, his voice like a whip. "Don't be a fool. You pull that trigger, and R.K. will never forgive you. He'll find you, bury you, and she'll go down with you. Is that what you want? To drag your sister into the grave with you?" The name struck again, R.K., like a shadow hanging over every lie, every betrayal. The way Ethan said it wasn't a threat. It was a certainty. Daniel faltered, sweat dripping down his temple, his jaw clenching. My heart twisted. He wasn't just fighting them. He was fighting himself. Years of fear, loyalty, and shame bound him tighter than any rope. I stepped closer, my voice steady but breaking at the edges. Daniel, look at me. Not him. Not Ethan. Me. His eyes flicked to mine, wide, desperate, pleading for a way out. You're not their pawn anymore, I whispered. You're my brother. You've already taken the first step by pointing that gun at him. Don't let Ethan scare you back into chains. Choose now. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world stilled. My ex whimpered. Ethan's eyes burned with command, and Daniel, my brother, stood trembling, the weight of 1,000 lies pressing on his shoulders. Then he drew a ragged breath. His decision burned across his face before the words ever left his lips. You're right, he said. It ends tonight. And just as his fingers squeezed the trigger, the ballroom doors burst open. Dozens of men in dark suits flooded in, their presence like a tidal wave. And leading them was a face I never expected to see tied to the initials R.K. The double doors slammed against the walls with a thunder that swallowed every breath in the room. Men in tailored black suits poured in like a tide, formation tight, their movements too sharp to be ordinary security. The crowd shrank against the walls, terrified murmurs buzzing under the crystal chandeliers. And then I saw him. Richard Kane, the philanthropist, the kingmaker, the man whose smiling face was plastered on charity galas, glossy magazines, and political campaigns. I'd shaken his hand once years ago at one of my ex's networking events, never suspecting the steel grip beneath his charm. Now, under the ballroom lights, he didn't look like a man of the people. He looked like the man pulling every string in the room. Enough. His voice rolled across the marble floor, deep and absolute. The kind of voice that wasn't used to being challenged. This ends now. My ex sagged in the guard's grip, a grotesque smile breaking across his face. You see, he croaked, chest heaving. This is who you're up against. You can't touch me. You can't touch us. Daniel's gun wavered, his eyes darting between me and R.K. For the first time tonight, real terror carved itself into his features. Richard Kane walked slowly, unhurried, as though the chaos was merely theater staged for him. His eyes swept over Ethan, then Claire's bleeding form, then my ex, and finally landed on me. I admired your persistence, he said, his lips curling into something like a smile. Not many stand against my people and live long enough to tell the story. But persistence can be inconvenient. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but my legs rooted to the marble. The folder in my hands suddenly felt less like evidence and more like a death warrant. Ethan bowed his head slightly, deferential. She's gone too far. Allow me to. But R.K. silenced him with a single glance. You've already failed once tonight. Sit down. The authority in his tone was terrifying. Even Ethan, who had controlled Daniel like a puppet, obeyed instantly, lowering his eyes. My ex smirked, thinking himself protected. She's nothing, he said, spitting venom toward me. A desperate ex with a vendetta. Destroy her, and we walk away clean. Richard Kane chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that made my skin crawl. Oh, I don't need to destroy her. He extended a hand toward me, calm, almost paternal. I need to own her. Hand over the documents, my dear. Come quietly, and perhaps you'll live to see another sunrise. The room fell utterly silent. Daniel's gun trembled, sweat streaming down his temple. My heart hammered so loud I swore the microphones would catch it. And then Richard added, voice icy. Or refuse, and I'll let your brother pay the price instead. Daniel's eyes locked on mine, wide with panic. His finger twitched on the trigger, and I realized, in this moment, my next move wouldn't just decide my fate. It would decide his. Every eye in the ballroom burned into me. The investors, the guards, the cameras still recording from shaky hands beneath tables. But none of it mattered. Only Daniel's trembling silhouette mattered, the gun quivering in his hands, his life dangling on R.K.'s words like a puppet string ready to snap. Richard Kane's gaze was fixed on me. Calm as a man watching a chess game he'd already won. The documents, he repeated, his hand outstretched. Or your brother dies tonight. My throat tightened, but I forced air into my lungs. You're bluffing, I said, though my voice cracked on the last word. Everyone here has seen enough already. You can't silence us all. A faint chuckle slid from his lips. My dear, history is written by the survivors. And I always survive. The guards' grips on my ex loosened slightly, as though they, too, had surrendered to the inevitability of Kane's command. My ex straightened his tuxedo and sneered at me, arrogance flooding back into his face. "Give him the folder," he taunted. "Be smart for once in your life." Daniel's knuckles whitened on the gun, torn between defiance and despair. His eyes screamed at me, "Don't do it." But his body shook with the knowledge that he was one command away from being executed by men he could never outrun. I lifted the folder, holding it out like an offering. Kane's smile deepened. For a second, I saw victory in his eyes. The predator convinced his prey had finally broken. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't come tonight unprepared. Because while this folder held the damning evidence, the real truth had already been sent. Every file, every recording, every bank transfer, synced to a cloud, time-stamped, programmed to release publicly if I didn't enter a code by morning. And Kane had just given me my opening. I let the silence stretch, let him taste his triumph. Then I smiled, a small, cold smile that didn't feel like mine. "You want the folder?" I said, stepping forward. "Come and take it." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Daniel's eyes widened. Kane's brows lifted, amused. But before his hand could close around mine, I tore the folder clean in half. Pages fluttered through the air like confetti, raining evidence across marble floors, cameras flashing as if it were a parade of truth. The room erupted. Shouts, screams, the frantic scramble of guests snatching papers from the ground. Kane's calm mask cracked for the first time, his hand curling into a fist. "You foolish girl," he hissed, low and venomous. "You've just signed your death." I met his glare head-on, my pulse steady for the first time all night. "Maybe," I whispered, "but I've already signed your downfall." And as if on cue, a deafening wail split the air, sirens, growing louder, closer. Police. They were already here. Red and blue lights slashed across the ballroom windows, painting the chandeliers in fractured colors. The siren's wail pressed against the glass until the double doors burst open again, this time with uniformed officers flooding inside, weapons drawn, commands sharp and practiced. "Drop the gun," one shouted at Daniel. For a heartbeat, my brother stood frozen, still aiming at my ex. His chest rose and fell like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. Then, with a shaky breath, he lowered the pistol and let it clatter to the marble. The sound echoed like a gavel strike. Two officers rushed him, pinning his arms, cuffing him before he could even look at me. "Wait," I cried, but my voice was drowned by the storm of orders and chaos. Meanwhile, the officers spread wide, circling Kane's suited men. "Hands where we can see them," barked another. The guards hesitated, glancing toward their boss. Richard Kane didn't flinch. He raised his hands with slow, calculated grace, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, "this is all a misunderstanding. I'm a respected man in this city. Call your chief. He knows me well." The arrogance in his tone made my stomach twist. He was betting on influence, on connections deep enough to turn sirens into silence. And judging by the flicker of hesitation in one officer's eyes, maybe he was right. But then, like a miracle, the scattered pages from my folder came back into play. Guests still clutching the evidence raised them high, shouting, filming, live-streaming. One woman cried out, "It's all here. The proof." Another man shoved his phone toward an officer, showing the video file of my ex and Ethan laughing over forged documents. The tide shifted. The officers stiffened, their gazes snapping back to Kane with sharper focus. This wasn't just a disruption at a gala anymore. It was a scandal caught live, already spreading beyond these walls. My ex thrashed against the security guards holding him, screaming, "She set me up. She's framing us." His voice cracked into hysteria, but no one was listening anymore. His empire of lies had collapsed under the weight of its own rot. And then Ethan, ever the strategist, made his move. He shoved an officer aside, lunged for the nearest exit, and bolted. Two of Kane's men followed. Chaos exploded again as officers gave chase, shouts of "Stop! Police!" ricocheting through the hall. But Kane didn't move. He just stood there, hands still raised, eyes locked on me. Not fear, not anger. Something colder, calculation. "You think this is over," he said, his voice low enough only I could hear above the shouting. "But you've only pulled at the first thread." An officer shoved him roughly, snapping cuffs onto his wrists. The crowd erupted in cheers, some even clapping, but his words burrowed into me deeper than the noise around us. Because as they dragged Richard Kane away, his eyes never left mine. And I knew. He wasn't defeated. He was warning me that this was only the beginning. The ballroom looked like a battlefield dressed in glitter. Broken glass sparkled under the flashing lights, toppled chairs lay scattered like casualties, and the once pristine stage was littered with shredded documents and the weight of every truth I'd unleashed. Officers swarmed, cuffing Kane's remaining men, escorting trembling guests outside, sealing the exits. The air was thick with smoke from the gunshot and the tang of spilled champagne, every breath jagged with adrenaline. My ex was dragged past me, wrists bound, his tuxedo disheveled, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. He spat at the floor near my shoes, eyes burning with a venom that used to cow me into silence. "Not tonight. You'll regret this," he snarled, voice hoarse. "You think they'll protect you? You don't even know what you've stepped into." I didn't flinch. For the first time, his threats landed like whispers in the wind, hollow. Claire was wheeled out on a stretcher, pale and weak, but still breathing. Her eyes fluttered open long enough to find mine. For a heartbeat, I thought she'd spit more venom too. But instead, her lips parted in a whisper I barely caught. "Sorry." Then the EMTs rushed her away, leaving me with the ache of betrayal and the faint sting of pity. Daniel knelt on the floor, cuffed, surrounded by 2 officers. His face was buried in his hands, shoulders trembling. I tried to reach him, but another officer blocked me. "Not now," he said firmly. But he tried to protect me. My voice cracked, desperate. The officer shook his head. "That'll be for the courts to decide." I backed away, my heart tearing in two. Daniel had betrayed me, yes, but he'd also turned the gun away from me, away from Kane. He'd chosen me at the edge of the abyss. And now he was being led away like one of them. Flashes from reporters' cameras pierced the chaos, questions flying like arrows. "Are you the whistleblower? How long have you known? Did you set up the evidence?" I turned from them all, refusing to let them make me into another headline before I could even breathe. The officers herded the last of Kane's men outside. For a moment, silence fell heavy across the ballroom. I stood there in the wreckage, surrounded by proof, by whispers, by the echo of Kane's voice still clawing at my mind. This is only the beginning. And in that silence, the truth settled like a stone in my chest. I'd torn down one empire tonight, but the shadows it belonged to were still out there, watching, waiting. I thought I'd feel victorious. Instead, I felt the weight of a war that had just declared itself. And as I turned toward the doors, ready to step out into the swarm of flashing lights and questions, an officer approached with something in his hand. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "we found this in Kane's jacket pocket. He said it was meant for you." He pressed a small, sealed envelope into my palm. My name was written on it in Kane's unmistakable handwriting. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. My name, etched in Kane's sharp, deliberate handwriting, burned against my skin like a brand. Around me, officers barked orders, cameras flashed, guests murmured, but all of it blurred into static. In that moment, it was just me and the envelope. I wanted to tear it open, to rip the truth from it like I had from every lie tonight. But my fingers hesitated. What if this was another trap? Another poison disguised as revelation? Still, curiosity burned hotter than fear. I slid a finger under the seal. The paper trembled as I unfolded the letter. "You were impressive tonight," it began, the words scrawled in black ink. "Stronger than I expected. Clever, brave, dangerous. That makes you valuable or expendable." My stomach turned. "Do not delude yourself. What you exposed was only a sliver of what lies beneath. You think you pulled the rug out from under me? You've merely drawn the curtain back on a stage far larger than this ballroom. Ethan, your ex, Claire, they were pawns. Replaceable. I am not." I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. "You have a choice. Walk away now, rebuild your life in silence, and I may let you. But if you continue, if you dig deeper, you'll find truths that will burn everything you love to ash, including your brother, especially your brother." The final line was underlined twice. "This is not over. RK." My knees threatened to give. I folded the letter quickly, shoving it back into the envelope just as an officer approached. "Ma'am," We need you outside for statements." I nodded, but my thoughts spun in violent circles. Kane was in cuffs. His empire fractured. And still, even in defeat, he managed to plant fear like a seed in my chest. As they escorted me out into the night, cameras flaring like lightning, I lifted my chin. The world would call me the whistleblower, the survivor, the woman who brought down a fraud. But inside, I knew the truth. This wasn't an ending. It was the prologue to a war. And as the flashing lights burned my face, I swore to myself, I wouldn't walk away. Not now. Not ever. Kane had underestimated me once. Next time, I'd be ready.